Is it more money, more problems for the San Francisco 49ers? Trent Williams joining Brandon Aiyuk and the already done Christian McCaffrey contract negotiations, all that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Crocky209. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. We love our everydayers, and we really appreciate it when you hit that subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. We've talked so much about contracts this offseason. I almost called Christian McCaffrey Christian McContract in the cold open just now. Like it's nonstop. And even the guys that you thought were done, like Christian McCaffrey, highest paid running back in the NFL. Nope, we're going to make him the highest paid still by even a little bit more. Trent Williams, one of the highest paid offensive linemen in NFL history. Now he wants a new deal. Maybe that's going to go a little bit higher than it already was for Trent Williams now that we've seen some other deals come in after his last contract. And of course, the Brandon Aiyuk saga is carrying on, Croc. And we have some reports now, some of the latest from Jeremy Fowler, who's been all over it recently, and he was on local radio at KNBR today, in fact, which is Monday. We're recording this podcast. Shout out to everybody jumping in with us live on this Monday. I was a little under the weather. We usually like to do one to kick off our week, Sunday Night Live, to put it first thing in your audio feeds on Monday morning. Weren't able to do it last night, but today we're coming at you lunchtime live, which is kind of fun too, and probably a different crowd that can come hang out with us live on YouTube too. Shout out to all of them. What were your initial? I'll get to those Jeremy Fowler reports in a second, Croc. What are your initial thoughts when you hear about all of a sudden there's a new star 49er that wants a new contract?
I think when it comes to Trent Williams, again, we kind of did this whole pecking order, right? And I think I tried to do it in the sense of kind of weapons, right? When you talk about the weapons, Brandon Aiyuk, him wanting a new contract, and I talked about the importance of the offense, and I'm like, well, it's kind of, starts with CMC, and then you have, Deebo Samuel, you have George Kittle, then you kind of get to Brandon Aiyuk. Well, if you talk about the overall importance of the offense, even maybe before Brock Purdy, it might start with Trent Williams. And this is what happens with contracts. It becomes outdated, and then the guy wants to renegotiate. I was kind of looking at some of the details of Devontae Smith's contract. I think before he even gets to the money from the extension, he might want to renegotiate that amount of money, because by then it's going to be so far away from what the receivers are all making around the league. I think Trent Williams, when he got paid, he was paid handsomely. I think the 49ers have had a lot of success since then. I think he understands his value and probably knows that my time may be coming to an end. But I think for him to ask for more money, he deserves it.
It's getting kind of crazy anymore that the contracts that you sign and the numbers that start aren't really even happening with these contracts. And there's so many like escape hatches and levers built into these contracts that teams can pull every year, and it changes the look, and they're manipulating the salary cap, and some teams are doing it even more than others. I know the New Orleans Saints is a perfect example for how many years they did that. And you think, oh, no way they could do it again. And they still pay guys and then still kick the can down the road. And it, for some teams, it never really catches up with them. I think it kind of had caught up to the Saints a little bit, but mostly that's because the talent, and especially their quarterback that left with the Los Angeles Rams, we saw it hit them a little bit, and they had that like ultimate stars and scrubs roster. The 49ers are headed in that direction. They're not quite there yet, but at some point you start. Here's a perfect example of it. So if you look at contracts that the 49ers have in 2028, Croc, and I'm looking at overthecap.com. The 49ers have one player under contract in 2028. That's Nick Bosa. His base salary, $33.5 million that year. But The 49ers have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 players that have salary cap hits because of void years during the 2028 season. Fred Warner, George Kittle, their contracts don't last through 2028, but they're void years at the end of their contracts. Javon Hargrave, Christian McCaffrey's new deal, Kyle Juszczyk, Leonard Floyd, Yetur Gross-Matos, Colton McKivitz, Juwan Jennings, Devondre Campbell, Jordan Elliott, Isaac Yedem, all those new contracts they signed this offseason, they're pushing salary cap hits down the road with void years. Now, it's not a ton of money, I don't think, and the salary cap by 2028 will probably have gone up quite a bit, but it just shows you where they're at in their sort of current roster lifespan with what they're doing. And they're doing all they can now to keep as many stars happy and on the roster. And they're pushing money down the road. Will it end up hurting them down the road? I don't know if it will, because I don't know if they'll have any more guys under contract. Basically, by 2028, it'll be, if they redo a contract with Brandon Aiyuk, it'll be Bosa, Aiyuk, and Purdy will be the only players that are currently on the roster, that are under contract in 2028, unless some of the guys that are on rookie deals now become stars and do new big contracts. So they're looking at a time down the road where they're like, we're not super worried about 2027, 2028, because we're trying to win now. And if we have some dead cap hits, then that's okay, as long as we win now. So they're trying to do everything they can to win now. And they're doing good by the players to try to keep them happy. And that's one of the things that I think fans struggle with, because on the surface, Croc, Christian McCaffrey, Trent Williams, yeah, you're the best at your position. You should get the most money, pay them as much as they deserve, right? And so ideally, you would have a great team and you'd pay out huge contracts, right? You'd be talking about like the New York Yankees, where there's no salary cap, or, now there's some luxury tax stuff, but there's no salary cap. You can have as many stars as you want and pay them all. It'd be awesome if the 49ers could just continue to do that, and that's how they're operating. But at some point, does it start to catch up to you when you're kicking the can down the road? Will it hurt them in the future? I don't know. But all these guys deserve a ton of money. Brandon Aiyuk deserves what he's asking for. Debo deserved it. Trent deserves it. Christian McCaffrey deserves it. All the guys that are getting paid deserve this money, and you would like to be able to pay them all. Can they continue to do it is the question.
I think Dub Alexander in the chat has a good point here. He said there's a difference between outperforming your contract to get a new deal versus trying to get a new deal because the cap goes up while you're under contract. And I think that's something key to kind of keep an eye on. People have talked about how the cap is going up. So, if you are Trent Williams and you're noticing that, how much stock do you put into the fact that, hey, I want to keep my percentage that I'm making the same, right? Like, so let's say, hypothetically speaking, when at the time he signed his last contract, he was making 15% of the cap or whatever, right? We'll just say 50%.
Yeah.
All right. Now the cap has gone up. Hey, I still want to make 15% of the cap. Would he have an argument from there? Because I think it's hard to say that he's outplaying his current contract, but he's definitely living up to it. So do you want to keep him at the same percentage that he's been getting?
When Justin Jefferson signed his new deal, I think it was somebody from ESPN broke down the numbers, and they brought up old big wide receiver contracts. And the two big deals were, at the time, 2011, Larry Fitzgerald. The next year, 2012, Calvin Johnson got huge contracts. And those wide receiver contracts were a certain percentage of the salary cap then. And even though it seems like the Justin Jefferson money is crazy, that percentage of the cap that Justin Jefferson's new deal is at $35 million per year is right in line with what those 2011 deals and 2012 deals for Larry Fitzgerald and Calvin Johnson were. And I'm with you. I almost wish that that's the way we could do this, is you sign a player to the percentage of the cap. Like that would, and it's like, okay, you don't have to renegotiate anything anymore. Now it'd be harder because I think teams want to be able to, because look, with the Christian McCaffrey deal, they actually brought the salary cap down. Now they have more money to operate, that if they want to this year, they can roll that cap over next year when it allows them to, be under the cap and operate next year, because they're paying guys and some of the dollar amounts go up, and then they'll have a little bit more that year, and then they'll roll it over to the next year when they're paying Bosa and they're paying Purdy and they're paying Aiyuk, right? And so I think that's the game the 49ers are playing right now. And when people talk about how much money they have created cap space wise right now. I don't think the 49ers are doing that to spend it. They're doing that to roll it over to next year. They did it last year as well. And with Trent Williams, I think the 49ers would probably like to be able to do that again with Trent Williams. But the thing is they don't have to. I've heard some people say that it's a good thing for the 49ers that Trent Williams wants a new contract. Well, it's like they don't have to. You don't have to ask players. The collective bargaining agreement makes it so you can do a simple restructure where you just turn the base salary, except for everything but the minimum, you turn that into salary, into signing bonus, and then you spread the signing bonus over the rest of the life of the contract. You don't have to ask a player to do that. You can just do that, and the player gets a check and go, cool, my base salary just became a signing bonus, and I just got paid today instead of over the course of the 17-week season. So all that is to be said, the 49ers can create more cap space doing a new deal for Trent Williams, and it probably end up looking a lot like the Christian McCaffrey deal.
I'm all for the percentage thing. Now, again, I'd say that selfishly, I can only imagine. So most people probably don't know how this podcast stuff works, but I make a percentage of our everything, right? Like all the money that comes together. Peacock and I, we agreed on a certain percentage and we get that. I can only imagine if Peacock was like, hey, Croc, what do you think about this? I took a dollar amount. The show has grown so much since then, and I still make that same dollar amount that I was making back in 2021 or whenever I started.
Yeah, I blew it. I should have given you a dollar amount instead of a percentage.
I'm loving the percentage, so I like that aspect of it. I get to kind of live that out, how with the percentage, your pay goes up as opposed to just staying the same, even though everything else around you goes up. I mean, his house goes up, the cost of cars, the cost of food, the cost of gas, everything else has inflation. Why can't my salary grow with that? And we're seeing that on Locked On. Trent Williams isn't seeing that with the 49ers.
Let's go. Percentage of the cap deals, the future in the NFL. I am on board with that one. Let's talk more Trent Williams, the reports on Brandon Aiyuk's latest contract negotiation information next. This episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, and a whole lot more. And you can bet on all of it at FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. There is Major League Baseball draft. There is NBA draft. There is so much that happens over the course of the summer with FanDuel, and of course the NFL season right around the corner, and you can bet on all of it there as well. You can bet on the 49ers to win the Super Bowl. You can bet on exact Super Bowl opponents. Cincinnati Bengals versus San Francisco 49ers, 27-1 odds. How about Baltimore Ravens versus the San Francisco 49ers? One of the most popular, actually, odds there is Niners against Baltimore Ravens. A rematch there. Could it be a rematch against the Kansas City Chiefs? You can bet on all those things. Offensive, defensive, rookie of the year, weekly bets, and so much more at FanDuel. All you got to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and win big this summer. And again, that is FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Let's go to the reports. KNBR had Jeremy Fowler of ESPN. He's been talking about this a lot recently, and some of the information makes tons of sense, and some of it's some new information. But according to Jeremy Fowler, he said, quote, there are certainly whispers around the industry that Trent Williams wants a new deal. He's not the highest paid player at his position anymore, but he's still clearly the best. They will probably have to take, let's see what it says here. They will probably have to take care of him one more time. That was Jeremy Fowler on ESPN this morning. And essentially, I would probably guess it's something similar to the Christian McCaffrey deal. And remember, the Christian McCaffrey deal is like, 2-year extension, $19 million per. What it ended up being is more of a restructure. They added a couple of years to the deal, some void years, spreading out that salary cap and some of those guarantees. And with Trent Williams, he's probably saw the Penei Sewell deal, and he's like, I want to be the highest paid guy again in the NFL. So we'll see if they're able to make that happen. But it's more of a keeping a veteran player happy. And it's probably a good sign that Trent Williams wants to play a while, right? And not like
how old is Trent?
He's 37 years old. This is age 37 season. I think he might still be 36 and turning 37. I'm not sure. So yeah, he's like, that's old for an offensive lineman. Offensive lineman can play for a while. He's obviously still playing at a high level. The thing would be like, okay, so you do a new deal with him, you add years, then he retires, or then his play starts to fall off because of age. And then now you have this, huge cap expenditure on a guy who's not going to be, the Trent Williams that we think of. And so that's really the only downside to a Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey extension.
Still think you got to take care of the silverback.
You got to take care of him. At a certain point, though, it's like, man, does everybody just get a new deal whenever they want? Like, how, is it only the big dogs that could come in and get a new deal? Does everyone just walk in and say, oh, I want a new deal too? You gave it to this guy, this guy, this guy. You gave it to Juwan Jennings. He's the number 3 wide receiver. I'm the number 3 corner. I want a new deal. I'm the center. I want a new deal. And so, like, when does it stop? Because I'm waiting for the 49ers to be like, nope, later to somebody. And they have really not ever done that since DeForest Buckner.
Well, I think that's, and you kind of threw a name in there. I hate that I'm always the one talking about Juwan Jennings. But if there's anyone that I feel like I don't have to re-up, it would be him. So if I want to save those millions of dollars and add it to Trent Williams, it's like, okay, you can walk, and Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowan, you guys are going to have a bigger role as rookies. And now I'm able to make the silverback happy. I'm able to make CMC happy. And hopefully throughout all this, they figure out a way to make Brandon Aiyuk happy.
The other thing that happens here is Jed York is like writing a lot of checks and sending out a lot of cash, because that, instead of spreading Christian McCaffrey's salary over all those weeks of the season, they gave him money last week, right? Millions of dollars. And so there's got to be a lot of cash on hand. I don't think the 49ers are going to go broke anytime soon, but Brandon Aiyuk's deal is going to have a big one. You got to put money in escrow for the guarantees on big deals like that. And then Purdy's is going to be even bigger next year after they did one of the biggest deals in NFL history last year with Nick Bosa. So it's a lot of cash the 49ers are throwing out there as well. But as long as they're willing to do it, and I think there's a lot of levers built into a lot of these deals where we're going to see stuff get restructured year after year after year. And so the cap picture changes quite a bit. The latest from Jeremy Fowler on the topic of Brandon Aiyuk, Croc. And that is that he was asked about the possibility of the 49ers electing not to extend Brandon Aiyuk and just letting him play out his 5th year. And he said, I'd almost like to see that. When teams challenge players like that, how do they respond? Do they sit out? Do you see as much of that anymore? It's partly why the market has been so explosive. I'd be curious to see how Aiyuk would handle that. And so Fowler Fowler says that kind of from like a fan's perspective of that would be really interesting to see. I want to see a team not doing, because everyone's done all the deals with all the players. Nobody plays hardball with the players anymore. So that's what I wonder, if Aiyuk could finally be the line where the 49ers say, $26 million. And that's kind of what reports are saying, that maybe that's where the number that the 49ers are at $26 million. And I'm guessing Aiyuk's probably closer to $30 million, right? Do they end up figuring out the $28 million per year salary, which Croc, you and I have talked about now for weeks, is probably the number that we expect it to come in around? Or do the Niners say, you're under contract, so here's our number, and we're going to stay at 26. So you can play it out, or you can keep holding out and then, lose paychecks. I wonder if Aiyuk could finally be the guy, because the 49ers haven't really done it. Teams around the league haven't really done it. They used to do that all the time. They would say, nope, but teams don't play hardball anymore. At some point, do the 49ers play hardball with a player?
Well, I don't think you have to play hardball with him, especially with the way that Fowler is kind of wording this, basically saying, let's see how he reacts, and then, go from there. I've seen the 49ers put Brandon Aiyuk in a very uncomfortable position. They made him, he was in the doghouse, right? Kyle Shanahan publicly said, hey, if we would have been healthier, he wouldn't have even played as much as a rookie, right? So he's talked all about that, talked about the situation, talked about all the different things he's needed to do, and he's done those things. So as it pertains to someone earning it and wanting to see how he'll react to adversity, I think we've seen that with him. So I get it from the standpoint of, hey, we want to stand pat at this number. But if there's anybody that's earned the right to earn a little bit more, it would be him. And if you still don't feel like you want to pay him that amount. And I have discussed ad nauseum why I feel like they don't quite want to fork over a bunch of money. Then let him walk or trade him, which is something that potentially can happen, especially after he plays on 5th-year option. They'll tag him and trade him.
And as we know with the Deebo Samuel deal too, it's like, okay, you sign a guy to a new deal, some of it's backloaded, then later on, things change and the picture changes and you could restructure, you could trade a guy, you could cut a guy. So yeah, that deal that you get signed more often than not turns out to not look exactly the same by the end of it, whether a guy gets a new deal before it's over, gets cut, gets traded, whatever it is. So interesting contract dealings in the NFL, as AG says in the chat. It's too bad contract talks have become such a big part of football. You can't even get too excited about your favorite player because they probably won't be on the team in a few years. Hey, Croc, remember? Goes back to my theory about jerseys, right? And people always ask, should I get the Bosa jersey? Should I get the Deebo jersey? And it's like, I hope you didn't get the Deebo because now he's wearing number 1. So that 19 Deebo isn't even the same Deebo jersey. He might not be around in 2025.
Go get you a Steve Young. Go get you a Montana.
Ronnie
go get
Lott.
You a Jerry Rice. Right line. Like,
yeah.
I have one 49ers jersey. It's a Colin Kaepernick jersey that was given to me. That is the only jersey I have. I will not go and purchase a 49ers uniform unless I'm just one of those people who just like to collect the uniforms and they have them. I've seen some really cool man caves out there in 49ers faithful world of man caves and basements and how they've decked it out and they have all these jerseys framed. That's cool. But if you're asking me about a 49ers jersey because you want to wear it around and wear the games, unless you just like investing money into these jerseys and setting it on fire in a couple of years, I wouldn't advise buy a jersey. Maybe Nick Bosa. I think you're safe for another 3 years with Bosa.
Yeah, you're safe there for a little while with Bosa. But if you want to be really safe, buy one of those jerseys that lives forever, immortal. 52 Patrick Willis, right? Hall of Fame linebacker, San Francisco 49ers his entire career. That's never going to change for the rest of eternity, right? Those are the jerseys I would recommend you buy. Next, a couple of notes here from the chat that I find very interesting about the idea of who's important to pay on the San Francisco 49ers.
We didn't quite talk about or go more into the $26 million amount.
Oh, right. Do you think that's disrespectful to Aiyuk if the 49ers sit at 26? To be honest with you, if I could see why the 49ers would have started at 26 to begin the offseason and expected to be able to get that deal done. And maybe it was Aiyuk's side that was like, let's wait for all these other deals because his side has only been strengthened with all these other contracts that have been signed. What do you think about the 26 mil number? It feels like 26 would not be signed, and the 49ers know that.
I would have expected them, again, in all negotiations, start low. Okay, let me come in, start low. I would even have thrown $24 million out there when the offseason started, knowing he's not going to take 24, but let's start lower. And then next thing you know, they offer him, 25. I would offer you 25, maybe a little bit more guarantees. He doesn't take that. Okay. As you start to work toward 26, I would assume that's where the 49ers, that's probably the number they had in their head all along that they feel comfortable paying. We're going to come in at this low amount, but we know we want to work towards 26, and that's what we ideally would give him. You start getting over that, I think the 49ers get very uncomfortable.
I can see that. Do you think do you think it's the right play for the 49ers to have a hard number and be like, yeah, if you want over 28, maybe next offseason? From a get your popcorn ready and see how it turns out, I could see why Jeremy Fowler would say that I'd be interested to see how that goes. And yet, you kind of want to see, let's see how that plays out. I don't know if that's ideal for the 49ers and their ultimate goal this year to win a Super Bowl. I think better vibes would help that. And I think they've shown us that by the Christian McCaffrey and now potentially doing a new deal with Trent Williams. Because it could be a little bit of a cloud over the team to have an upset Brandon Aiyuk, a guy maybe that comes into the season not even ready to play or not even reporting by week 1.
it depends on, again, for me, it all comes down to Kyle Shanahan. And I don't know how much say so he has in these negotiations, but unless he plans on, I get it, I've talked a lot about this, but using Aiyuk differently, I don't see how he would go over. I feel uncomfortable if I remove, or add, because I see it all on social media, 49er fans that care about what a guy makes. If I put on the fan cap and be like, oh man, you can't pay this guy this amount, I would not, as a fan or 49ers, feel comfortable paying him more than 26. You start getting up to $27 million, you don't use him that way. And I've been crying about this for the past year. They don't use him like the other guys. So if I don't ever plan on using Aiyuk in my offense the way that the other receivers who get paid $27+ million get used, why would I pay them that much? So that's where I would draw the hard line. And that's, again, if I'm for now, if I'm take my fan cap off and I'm back with the Eric Crocker cap on, pay him 27, but man, start to feature him a little bit more in the passing game. I think it will open up more of the offense for you.
I mean, I think that's the meeting. And if you're John Lynch and you're Prague doing the contract negotiations, and you have a meeting with ownership and Jed York's in the room and Kyle Shanahan's in the room, I think it's a pretty simple question. You ask Kyle, said, what's the future of Brandon Aiyuk? Is the future of this passing game feature Brandon Aiyuk as the number one option in the passing game? Like, is that, it doesn't have to be this year, but is that the plan you envision going forward? And he's like, yeah, so this is the plan. Right now we've got all these weapons. We're going to do this, but 2025, now get this, it's going to be Aiyuk, and we're going to move him around. We're going to do all this. He's a complete player, and he's going to be the focal point of the passing game. Then you're like, okay, let's get this deal done, $28 million per year, whatever it is. And you sign it. And if Kyle Shanahan's like, nope, I like his role. He's in the perfect role. And hope, potentially maybe even a Ricky Pearsall could be that role. And we're going to be the run first team. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Then you don't sign him at all. So to me, whatever the low ball number is, doesn't matter. You're either going on the 5th-year option, trading him next offseason, tag and trade, or you sign him to whatever the market says you should sign him to right now. I think those are the two options for me.
And when you mentioned him as, the focal point of the passing game in the offense, he was the most targeted 49er player.
Yeah.
But even then, with the way that he's targeted, it is not remotely close to the other guys that are making that 128 or 28 million per year and up, or 27 million a year and up. Those guys are targeted 50 more times than him. I mean, it's a lot. So again, they're not just a focal point of the offense in the passing game. They are a focal point of the offense.
Yeah.
And Aiyuk, again, it is not a slight at him. 49ers have so many good players, but it starts with CMC. And then when you start just talking about importance, to get to a couple other guys before you get into the importance of Brandon Aiyuk in this offense.
Yeah, there's at least 2 or 3 guys that are featured before him, even though at the end of the season, his numbers are right there and even above the other guys. He's not as featured as some other players in the 49ers offense.
And Super Bowl, biggest game of the year, 49ers threw the ball to Deebo Samuel like 13 times. And it's
how about this idea? At least Trent is a blue chipper, unlike BA. Is Brandon Aiyuk not even worth this conversation? Like Trent Williams, Hall of Fame player. Like his ballot, I think, has been punched for Canton. Right now, BA's not there, but is Brandon Aiyuk not even a blue chipper worth the same conversations as a McCaffrey or a Trent Williams are?
The tough thing with that, right, with calling Brandon Aiyuk a blue chipper or not, is if he was used differently, will we view him differently?
Yes.
I'd be willing to ask 49er fans, and you guys can all put this in the chat or in the comments. What does Brandon Aiyuk need to get better at? If there's one thing where you'd say, you know what separates this guy from Brandon Aiyuk, it would be this and this. Like if Brandon Aiyuk was able to do these things, then I could see him potentially being a blue chipper or deserve that kind of money from an ability standpoint. Because if you watched last year, you and I have been very vocal about, man, he needs to get better at contested catches. Well, damn, he got better at contested catches. And like we saw week 1 when he caught the fade on Patrick Peterson, and I thought he continued winning. He's winning vertically. You got I feel like every day I see a Brock Purdy clip where he's throwing the ball. Look, see, he can throw downfield. Who's throwing downfield to? Brandon Aiyuk. So he's winning vertically. He's winning on the 50-50s. We know he can win on routes underneath. So what is it that he can do better that he's not currently doing that will make people feel like he's more in that blue chip category or more in the category of other guys? I think there's one thing I feel like he can improve on, and I think that's his run after catch.
Which was the thing that he had in college. I actually went back and watched some Brandon Aiyuk from Arizona State this offseason because I wanted to remind myself what a college player looks like when I was watching some of the other prospects for this draft. Brandon Aiyuk was better run after the catch. I don't know what happened. His transition to the NFL, the run after the catch was not as much as I thought it was going to be as a college player. Great point by AG, by the way, in the chat says, I wonder if Brock Purdy has any input on who the 49ers prioritize. Yeah. Like if that's the future 1-2, if he loves throwing to him, that's pretty important for Brock Purdy to have his number one guy. If that's who he likes throwing to the most. So that's pretty significant thing.
I don't want to butcher the name in the chat, but he says his 4.5 speed hurts his deep threat ability. He definitely benefits from Shanahan's scheme. But I'll just watch him run go routes, and he ran by guys. Now, is he like super speedster? No. But I think he does play at a fast enough speed that shows, hey, I can win vertical. Like, that's not an issue.
Oh, yeah. He plays faster than whatever 4.5 flat he ran at the combine. He plays faster than that for sure. And I think there was something with an injury or he had
a core muscle injury or something he was working through at the combine.
Yeah, we found
some guys were like, oh, wow, he ran a 4.5 while having that core injury. Anybody that understands like how the core works, everything, especially when it comes to lifting the knees, being able to hold that knee drive, it starts with having a strong core. So if you have an injury to your core, that definitely can really hurt what your 40-yard dash time ends up being.
Absolutely. So that is a big question the 49ers have to answer and to decide how far they will go with Brandon Aiyuk. Will Brandon Aiyuk and the 49ers get closer to whatever their numbers are if they are indeed, 26 and 30? They're $4 million apart per year. Can they get to that $28 million per year common ground? Can they get a deal done? I think they will. It's still very early, but that is the latest with Brandon Aiyuk and those contract negotiations. Some questions definitely need to be answered there internally, I think, by the 49ers. I'm sure those questions have already been answered. And so the result will probably tell us that answer once we get closer to training camp and the regular season. Thanks, everybody, for making this your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you are subscribed to Locked On 49ers on YouTube and everywhere you listen to your podcast. Back tomorrow, right here, Locked On 49ers.